What if I told you every urban legend you've ever heard was true? Every monster, every ghost, every dark tale whispered in the dead of night. I didn't believe it either, until I found myself living the nightmare. I was a skeptic, always had been. I grew up on horror movies, ghost stories, and the kind of bullshit urban legends you hear around campfires or from that one weird uncle who swears he saw Bigfoot once. But I never believed any of it. I was a man of logic, of science, and I was convinced that all those stories were just that. Stories. That is, until the night I learned the hard way that some things are more real than you can ever imagine. It started with a bet, like most stupid decisions do. My buddies and I were drinking one night, shooting the shit when the conversation turned to urban legends. The usual suspects came up. Bloody Mary, the hookman, that one about the babysitter who gets calls from inside the house. We laughed it off, talking about how dumb people must be to believe in that crap. That's when Jake, the loudmouth of the group, slapped down $100 on the table.
I'll bet you're too chicken to check out that old asylum on the edge of town. You know, the one where they say all those kids disappeared?
I snorted, rolling my eyes. That place is just a rundown building, Jake. There's nothing there but rats and mold.
Prove it,
He challenged, his eyes gleaming with mischief.
Go there tonight, spend an hour inside, and bring back something to prove you were there. If you do, the money's yours.
I should have told him to fuck off, should have just laughed it off and gone home. But the alcohol had me feeling bold, invincible even, and before I knew it, I'd agreed. We piled into my car, Jake in the passenger seat, and drove out to the asylum. It was a few miles out of town, surrounded by thick woods that made the road feel like it was leading us straight into the mouth of some dark, hungry beast. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the headlights barely cut through the fog that clung to the trees like a shroud. The asylum was a hulking, dilapidated structure, its windows broken and boarded up, the walls covered in graffiti and vines. The gate hung open, creaking in the wind, and the whole place reeked of decay and abandonment.
Here we are,
Jake said with a grin, clapping me on the back.
Good luck, man. I'll be waiting right here.
Yeah, I muttered, grabbing a flashlight from the glove compartment. This'll be quick. I stepped out of the car, the cold night air biting at my skin, and made my way to the entrance. The door was barely hanging on its hinges, and it groaned as I pushed it open, the sound echoing through the empty halls. The inside was even worse than I expected. The floor was covered in debris, broken glass, crumbling plaster, and what looked like old, rotting medical equipment. The walls were lined with faded, peeling posters, warning about diseases that hadn't been relevant for decades. The smell was overwhelming, a mix of mold, urine, and something far worse, something that made my stomach churn. I walked deeper into the building, my footsteps echoing off the walls, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. I was supposed to be finding something to bring back, but the further I went, the more I realized I didn't want to touch anything in this place. I was about to turn back when I heard it, a faint, distant sound like the shuffling of feet or the rustling of fabric. I froze, my heart skipping a beat, my mind racing. There was no way anyone else was here. The place had been abandoned for years. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. "Is someone there?" No answer. Just silence. I shook my head, cursing myself for being so jumpy. It was probably just the wind, or maybe an animal that had gotten inside. But as I turned to leave, I heard it again, louder this time, closer. I spun around, the flashlight beam swinging wildly as I tried to pinpoint the source of the sound. That's when I saw it. A figure standing at the end of the hallway, just barely visible in the darkness.
Who the fuck are you?
I shouted, my voice echoing through the empty halls. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. It just stood there, its head tilted slightly as if it were watching me. A chill ran down my spine and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Something was wrong. Something was very fucking wrong. I took a step back, my mind screaming at me to get the hell out of there, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. Then, the figure moved. It was slow at first, a shuffling step that made my skin crawl. For a second I thought it was Jake fucking with me. But then it started to pick up speed, its movements jerky, unnatural. like a marionette being yanked by invisible strings. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't know what the hell was happening, didn't care. I just knew I had to get out of there. But the thing was fast, faster than it had any right to be. I could hear it behind me, its footsteps echoing off the walls, getting closer and closer with each passing second. I didn't dare look back, didn't want to see whatever it was that was chasing me. I rounded a corner and saw the entrance up ahead, the door hanging open like a lifeline. I was almost there, almost free, when something cold and slimy wrapped around my ankle, yanking me off my feet. I hit the ground hard, the flashlight flying out of my hand and clattering to the floor, the beam flickering as it rolled away. I tried to kick free, but whatever had grabbed me wasn't letting go. I screamed, the sound raw and primal, filled with a terror I hadn't felt since I was a kid. I reached for the flashlight, desperate to get a better look at what was holding me, but before I could grab it, something heavy slammed into my back, knocking the wind out of me. I rolled over, gasping for breath, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't a person. Not anymore. It was twisted and deformed, its skin gray and mottled, its eyes sunken and empty. Its mouth was stretched into a grotesque grin, teeth sharp and jagged, its breath reeking of death and decay. It was as if time stopped for a second. I thought, is this a zombie? At the same time, I noticed the wet tentacle-like arms snaking out of the darkness. I lost my shit then. I'm strong and fast. I bucked and flailed. I managed to get myself free and bolted. I pumped my arms and legs to go faster. Faster, damn it, faster. It lunged at me, its claws digging into my flesh, its mouth opening wide as it went for my throat. I screamed again, the sound echoing off the walls, but there was no one to hear me, no one to help me. I don't know how I got away. The next thing I remember, I was stumbling out of the asylum, blood pouring from the wounds on my neck and chest, my vision blurry and my head spinning. Jake was waiting by the car, his face pale as he took in the sight of me.
What the fuck happened to you?
He demanded, his voice shaking. I couldn't answer. I couldn't even think. I just collapsed, my body trembling, my mind replaying the horror I had just lived through. He dragged me into the car, slamming the door shut as he started the engine. We sped away from the asylum, the tires screeching on the pavement, but I couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop seeing that thing in my mind's eye.
What the hell happened in there?
Jake asked again, his voice frantic. I saw something, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Something that shouldn't exist. He didn't ask any more questions. He just drove, the car hurtling down the dark, empty road as we fled from the nightmare. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that I left that night behind and never looked back. But the truth is, you can't escape something like that. Not really. The nightmares followed me. I didn't escape that night. It let me go. Now I see it everywhere, it hides in the shadows, but I know it's there. And sometimes, when the night is quiet and the world feels just a little too empty, I can still feel its claws on my skin, still hear its breath on my neck, teeth in my throat. Sooner or later it will finish what it started with me. Trust me, monsters are real.